They thought she was just another defendant they could bully. They thought the badge was a shield that made them untouchable. They were wrong. In the quiet halls of the 4th District Courthouse in Riverton, Officer Derek Lawson made the biggest mistake of his life. He raised his hand against State Representative Jada Mitchell. He expected her to cower. Instead, he woke up on the floor with his career and his life shattered. This is not just a story about a fight. It is a story about the brutal, unstoppable force of karma. This is what happens when the system tries to break the wrong woman. The rain was coming down in sheets on the outskirts of Riverton, a town that sat uncomfortably between old money and decaying industrial sprawl. It was a gray day that seemed to leach the color out of everything. Jada Mitchell tightened her grip on the steering wheel of her modest Ford sedan. She wore a simple beige raincoat over a business suit, her hair pulled back in a severe, practical bun. To the casual observer, she might have looked like a school principal or a mid-level manager, but anyone who looked closer, specifically at her eyes, saw the steel. She was the newly elected state representative for the district, a woman who had clawed her way up from the projects on the east side of Riverton through law school, on a scholarship, and finally into the halls of legislative power. She was not part of the club. She was the disruption. And Officer Derek Lawson hated disruptions. Derek Lawson sat in his patrol car, concealed behind a billboard advertising a personal injury lawyer. He was a man of thick proportions, thick neck, thick arms, and a thick skull. He had been on the force long enough to know exactly how far he could bend the rules before they snapped. He was known in the precinct as the Bulldog. He was not smart, but he was loud. And in Riverton, loud often won. He saw the Ford roll past. It was technically speeding, practically negligible. But Derek saw the driver's profile. He saw a black woman in a decent car looking confident. It rubbed him the wrong way. It was a slow afternoon and he felt like asserting some dominance. The lights flashed blue and red, fracturing the rainy gloom. Jada sighed, checking her rearview mirror. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered. She pulled over safely, killed the engine, and placed her hands at the 10 and 2 positions on the wheel. She knew the drill. She had given seminars on the drill. Derek took his time approaching. He adjusted his belt, hitched up his pants, and tapped on the glass with his flashlight, even though it was daytime. Jada rolled the window down. "Good afternoon, officer. Was I speeding?" Derek did not answer immediately. He leaned down, letting the rain drip from the brim of his hat into the car. He chewed on a piece of gum with an obnoxious, wet, smacking sound. "License and registration," he said, flatly. Jada moved slowly. "I'm reaching into my glove box." She narrated her movements, a habit from her days as a defense attorney representing kids who had not been so lucky. She handed over the documents. Derek glanced at the ID Jada Mitchell. The name meant nothing to him. He did not follow politics. He followed sports and precinct gossip. He read the letters on the special license plate designation on the registration. But he misread it or did not care. "What's this? Military police?" he scoffed. "You don't look like military." "State representative," Jada corrected him, her voice cool and steady. "I represent this district." Derek laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "Is that right? Well, state representative, you were speeding, and my speedometer said otherwise, officer." "Are you calling me a liar?" Derek's tone shifted instantly. The bully had arrived. "I'm stating a fact. If you issue the ticket, I'll contest it in court. That is my right." Derek's face reddened. He was not used to backtalk. Certainly not from women, and definitely not on a rainy day. He leaned in further, his face inches from hers. "You think you're special because you got some fancy title out here. I'm the law. You're just another speeder." He snatched the license back. "Step out of the car for a speeding ticket?" Jada asked, her eyebrows raising. "That is not standard procedure, officer." She glanced at his badge. "Lawson, I smell alcohol." Derek lied. It was smooth, practiced, the universal justification for escalation. Jada did not drink. She had not touched a drop in years. She knew exactly what this was. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out into the rain. She stood tall for a woman, and she stood straight. She did not shiver, despite the cold. "Turn around. Hands on the hood," Derek barked. He patted her down far more roughly than necessary. His hand lingered on her waist, a power move designed to humiliate. Jada did not flinch. She was cataloging everything. The smell of stale tobacco on his breath. The unauthorized patch on his vest that read Predator. The lack of a body camera. Or rather, the fact that it was conveniently switched off. "You're resisting," Derek whispered in her ear. "I am standing perfectly still," Jada said, her voice dropping an octave. "Officer Lawson, I strongly suggest you write the citation and let me go. You're making a mistake." "Is that a threat?" Derek spun her around, slamming her back against the wet metal of the car. "It's legal counsel," Jada replied. Derek handcuffed her. He did it tight, the metal biting into her wrists. "Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and let's add assault on an officer just for the attitude." He shoved her into the back of the cruiser. As the door slammed shut, separating her from the rainy world, Jada did not cry. She did not panic. She stared at the mesh divider, her eyes narrowing. Derek climbed into the front seat, chuckling to himself. He picked up his radio. "Dispatch, bringing one in." Unruly female agitated. He thought he had bagged a trophy. He had no idea he was transporting a live grenade. The holding cell at the 4th Precinct smelled of bleach and despair. Jada had been there for some time. They had fingerprinted her, taken her mugshot, and stripped her of her blazer. She sat on the cold bench in her white blouse, now stained with rain and grime. She had used her one phone call to reach Ryan Callahan. Ryan was not a politician. He was a shark in a three-piece suit. He had been Jada's mentor in law school and was now one of the most feared civil rights attorneys in the state. When he arrived at the precinct, the atmosphere changed. The desk sergeant, a man named Hayes, who was usually asleep, sat up straight. Ryan did not yell. He whispered. And when Ryan Callahan whispered, people lost their pensions. By the time Jada was released on bail, she walked out of the station, her wrists bruised. Ryan was waiting by his car. "They charged you with assault?" Ryan asked, lighting a cigarette. "He said I lunged at him," Jada said, rubbing her wrists. "There's no dash cam footage?" "He claimed it malfunctioned." "Of course it did." Ryan exhaled smoke into the night air. "Judge Whitaker is sitting for the hearing. You know him?" Jada let out a bitter laugh. "Clayton Whitaker, the man who thinks the 50s never ended? Yes, I know him. It's a setup, Jada. Lawson and Whitaker play poker together. The union is already spinning this. They leaked the mugshot. Drunk state rep attacks hero cop. It's on the morning news." Jada looked at her phone for the first time. Her notifications were a wall of hate, calls for her resignation, racist vitriol. But buried in there were messages of support from her constituents, the people who actually knew her. "Let them spin it," Jada said, getting into the car. "I want my day in court. Expedited hearing. I want Lawson on the stand." "You're playing with fire," Ryan warned. "Whitaker will let Lawson do whatever he wants in that courtroom." "Good. Jada said, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. I want him comfortable. I want him arrogant. The courtroom was packed. The press had descended like vultures. The narrative was juicy. A rising black female politician brought low by her own uncontrollable rage. Jada sat at the defense table wearing a fresh navy suit. She looked impeccable, calm. Beside her, Ryan Callahan arranged his papers with surgical precision. On the other side of the aisle sat Officer Derek Lawson. He was in his dress uniform, looking every bit the American hero. He had even put a small bandage on his cheek, implying an injury that didn't exist. He smiled at the jury, then at the gallery. When his eyes landed on Jada, the smile curled into a sneer. Judge Clayton Whitaker swept in. He was a man with a face like a crumpled paper bag, and eyes that held zero warmth. All rise. The bailiff intoned. Be seated. Whitaker grunted. He looked over his spectacles at Jada. Ms. Mitchell, a disturbing set of charges for an elected official. They are fabricated charges, Your Honor, Ryan Callahan said, standing up. We will see. Whitaker dismissed him with a wave. Prosecution, call your witness. The prosecutor, a young man named Harris, who looked like he had not slept in a week, called Officer Lawson. Lawson took the stand. He placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Jada watched him. She was analyzing his body language, the way he leaned back, the way he smirked at his buddies in the back row. He felt safe. Officer Lawson, Harris began. Tell us what happened. Lawson launched into a performance. Well, I stopped the defendant for erratic driving, dangerous speeds. When I approached, she was belligerent, screaming. I tried to de-escalate, but she smelled of alcohol. When I asked her to step out, she swung at me, scratched my face. I had to subdue her for her own safety. The gallery murmured. The press scribbled furiously. Liar, Jada whispered. Objection. The prosecutor shouted. The defendant is intimidating the witness. Sustained. Judge Whitaker banged his gavel. Miss Mitchell, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Your Honor. Jada stood up. She could not help herself. She was a lawyer. She knew the rules, but the injustice was burning a hole in her chest. He is lying under oath. Request to treat the witness as hostile. Denied. Whitaker snapped. Sit down or you will be in a cell before lunch. It went on for some time. Lawson painted Jada as a monster. He described her as hysterical and animalistic. He used every dog whistle word in the book. Finally, it was the cross-examination. But instead of Ryan, Jada stood up. Your Honor, I will represent myself for the cross, she said. Ryan hesitated, then nodded. He knew she needed to do this. Jada walked to the center of the room. She did not stay behind the podium. She walked right up to the witness stand. She was close enough to smell the cheap cologne Lawson was wearing. Officer Lawson Jada began, her voice ringing clear without a microphone. You stated I scratched you. That's right, Lawson said, touching the fake bandage. And yet my fingernails are and have always been short, military regulation length. She held up her hands for the jury. How did I scratch you, officer? You used your keys, Lawson stammered, improvising. My keys were in the ignition. You admitted that in your police report. Jada picked up the report from the evidence table. Page 2. Keys remained in vehicle. So, are you lying now or were you lying then? Lawson's face flushed. I do not remember every detail. It was a chaotic situation. Chaotic because you made it so, Jada pressed. Officer, is it not true you have excessive force complaints in your file? Objection, Harris shouted. Relevance. Sustained. Whitaker barked. Move on, Ms. Mitchell. Jada did not back down. She moved closer. She was inside Lawson's personal space now. You like to hurt people, do not you, Derek? You like to feel big. I protect this city. Lawson spat, his composure cracking. You protect nothing. You are a bully with a badge, and you picked the wrong victim. Lawson leaned forward over the railing of the witness stand. His face was twisted in rage. The mask of the calm officer was slipping. You listen to me, you little, Judge Whitaker warned. But he did not bang the gavel. He looked amused. Say it. Jada challenged him, her voice low, meant only for him. Say what you really want to say. You should have stayed in the gutter where you came from. Lawson hissed loud enough for the front row to hear. Is that a legal opinion? Jada mocked him. That was the breaking point. The bulldog snapped. Lawson stood up in the witness box. You shut your mouth. He did not think. He did not look at the cameras. He did not look at the judge. He just reacted. He lunged over the low wooden railing of the witness stand. The courtroom gasped as one entity. Lawson reached out. His heavy hand swung through the air in a wide arc. Crack. It was not a punch. It was a slap. A disrespectful, dismissive, open-handed slap across Jada Mitchell's face. The sound echoed off the mahogany walls like a gunshot. Jada's head snapped to the side. The courtroom went dead silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop. Judge Whitaker froze, his gavel hovering in midair. The prosecutor dropped his pen. Time suspended. Lawson stood there, breathing heavily, his hands still raised, realizing what he had just done. He had just physically assaulted a state representative in open court on camera in front of a judge. But the story was not about the slap. It was about the response. Jada slowly turned her head back to face him. Her lip was bleeding. A drop of bright red blood ran down her chin, but her eyes were absolute zero. She did not look like a politician anymore. She looked like the soldier she used to be. Mistake, Jada whispered. The silence following the slap was brief. It was broken not by a scream, but by movement. Officer Lawson, realizing the magnitude of his error, tried to double down. His arrogance would not let him retreat. I told you to shut up, he roared, raising his hand again, this time bunching it into a fist. He stepped down from the witness box, towering over her. The bailiffs were moving, but they were old and slow. They were 20 feet away. Lawson was 2 feet away. Jada Mitchell did not wait for rescue. She dropped her weight. It was a subtle shift, her heels digging into the parquet floor. She had spent years in the military police corps, some of them as a close-quarters combat instructor. She had not used those skills in a decade, but muscle memory does not forget. As Lawson threw the punch, a sloppy haymaker aimed at her jaw. Jada did not retreat. She stepped in. She parried his arm with her left forearm, a sharp, violent block that knocked his strike off course. Lawson stumbled forward, his momentum working against him. Jada pivoted. Her hips generated the torque. This was not a slap. This was not a scratch. She drove her right fist straight into the button, the nerve cluster at the point of the chin. It was a textbook cross, delivered with the precision of a piston. Thud. The sound was sickeningly wet and heavy. Lawson's eyes rolled back into his head instantly. His knees buckled. He did not fall gracefully. He crumpled. He fell face first like a chopped tree, hitting the floor with a vibration that shook the tables. He did not move. Jada stood over him. She adjusted her blazer. She wiped the blood from her lip with the back of her hand. She looked down at the unconscious form of the man who had terrorized her district for years. Then she looked up at Judge Whitaker. The judge's mouth was hanging open, his face pale as a ghost. "Your Honor," Jada said, her voice steady, though her chest was heaving slightly. "I'm placing this officer under citizen's arrest for assault and battery. I claim self-defense under the statutes of this state." Pandemonium erupted. "Cut the cameras," someone yelled. "Get a medic," shouted another. Two bailiffs finally reached Jada. They looked terrified of her. They hesitated, hands hovering over their tasers. "Do not." Jada warned them, holding up a finger. "I am the victim here. He attacked me. You all saw it." Ryan Callahan was already at her side, shielding her from the approaching deputies. "If you touch her, I will sue this county into the Stone Age," Ryan roared, his voice finally finding its full volume. He struck an elected official. "We have it on video." From the gallery, a young reporter named Casey Vaughn was live streaming on her phone. She had captured everything, the slap, the knockout, the aftermath. "Are you seeing this?" Casey whispered to her phone, her hands shaking. "Representative Mitchell just knocked out Officer Lawson. He is out cold. He is not moving." The video was already climbing. Lawson groaned on the floor, trying to push himself up. He flopped back down, drool pooling on the expensive courtroom rug. His predator persona had evaporated. He looked like exactly what he was, a bully who got hit back. Judge Whitaker slammed his gavel, trying to regain control of his courtroom. "Clear the court. Everyone out. Bailiffs, take Miss Mitchell into custody." "Custody!" Jada shouted over the noise. "For what? Defending myself?" Contempt. Assault. Whitaker was panicking. He knew his friend Lawson was in the wrong, but the system protects its own. "Get her out of my sight." The bailiffs moved in. Jada put her hands behind her back voluntarily. She did not fight them. She wanted the image. She wanted the world to see her being handcuffed while the man who assaulted her was being tended to by paramedics. As they led her out the side door, Jada looked back at the camera phone held by the young reporter. She did not smile. She just nodded. The war had just begun. Jada was taken back to the same holding cell she had occupied earlier. But this time the mood was different. The officers did not sneer. They did not make jokes. They looked at her with a mixture of fear and awe. Word travels fast in a precinct. She knocked out Lawson, the bulldog, the guy who bench-pressed heavy weights. She dropped him with one punch. Inside the cell, Jada sat on the cot. Her hand throbbed. She suspected she might have a hairline fracture in her knuckles. It was worth it. Outside the precinct, the world was catching fire. Casey Vaughn's video had hit social media, then the news. The headline was everywhere. Courtroom knockout. Representative Mitchell floors corrupt cop. The blue wall of silence tried to activate immediately. The police union president, a man named Wayne Donnelly, held a press conference on the steps of the courthouse soon after. This was a vicious, unprovoked attack on a decorated officer. Donnelly lied, sweating profusely under the television lights. Officer Lawson was attempting to maintain order. Miss Mitchell used lethal martial arts techniques. We are calling for her immediate removal from office and felony charges. But Donnelly had a problem. The internet sleuths had enhanced the audio from the courtroom feed. They heard Lawson's whisper, "You should have stayed in the gutter where you came from." They heard the slap. The narrative was not holding. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Derek Lawson woke up with a wired jaw. He was in a private room guarded by two sympathetic officers. His head felt like it had been split open. He checked his phone. His inbox was full, not with support, but with hate and fear. A text from Judge Whitaker. "You idiot. You ruined everything. Keep your mouth shut." Lawson threw the phone against the wall. He was the victim. Why was not anyone seeing that? Back at the jail, Ryan Callahan arrived with a writ of habeas corpus. He looked energized. He looked like a man who was about to eat a steak dinner. "You are trending in multiple countries," Ryan said through the bars. "Is that good?" Jada asked, icing her hand with a cold water bottle a sympathetic rookie had given her. "It is leverage," Ryan said. "But they are going to play dirty, Jada. They are going to dig up everything. Your ex-husband, your brother's drug charge, everything. My brother has been clean for years. My ex-husband is a footnote. Let them dig," Jada said. "What about Lawson?" "He is in the hospital. Concussion, broken jaw, ego death." Ryan grinned. "But here is the real news. Since the video went viral, my phone has been ringing off the hook. Not reporters, victims." Jada sat up straighter. "Victims of Lawson. Dozens of them." Ryan lowered his voice. "People who were too scared to speak up. A shopkeeper he extorted. A teenager he beat up in an alley. A woman whose sexual assault case he buried because the suspect was his cousin." Jada's eyes hardened. "Get their statements, all of them." "I am already on it." "But Jada, there is something else." Ryan looked around to ensure they were not being listened to. One of the callers was a clerk for Judge Whitaker. "She says she has proof that Whitaker and Lawson were running a racket. Traffic fines, bail bonds, a pipeline of money." Jada stood up, the pain in her hand forgotten. "That is it. That is the kill shot. We need the evidence," Ryan warned. "And Whitaker knows we are coming for him. He just signed a warrant for a search of your home. They are looking for drugs, weapons, anything to discredit you." "Let them search," Jada said. "My house is clean. But if they plant something, I have a private investigator watching your house right now," Ryan assured her. "If they plant a toothpick, we will know." The door to the cell block opened. The chief of police, Chief Kevin Greer, walked in. He looked tired. He was a man who tried to walk the line, but the line had just been erased. "Miss Mitchell," Greer said, "you are being released on your own recognizance. No bail." Jada asked archly. "The district attorney decided it was not prudent given the public sentiment," Greer said. He unlocked the cell door himself. "Chief," Jada said, stepping out, "I want Lawson's badge and I want Whitaker's gavel." Greer looked at her. He did not argue. "If half of what I am hearing is true, Miss Mitchell, you might just get them." Jada walked out of the precinct into a sea of flashbulbs. The crowd was massive. People were chanting her name. She did not wave. She did not smile. She walked to the microphone set up by the press. She looked directly into the lens. "Today, a man thought he could put me in my place," Jada said, her voice amplified over the crowd. "He thought his badge gave him the right to assault a citizen. He found out that he was wrong. But this is not about me. This is about every person in Riverton who has been slapped, beaten, or silenced by men like Derek Lawson. I am not just going to fight my charges. I am going to burn their corruption to the ground. If you have a story, come to me. Do not be afraid anymore." The bully is down. The crowd roared. But across town, in a dimly lit office, Judge Whitaker was pouring a drink. He was not done. He picked up a burner phone and dialed a number. "We have a problem," Whitaker said. "The Mitchell woman. She needs to disappear. Not a hit, that is too loud. Make it a scandal. Destroy her credibility tonight." The voice on the other end was raspy. "It will cost you. Just do it." Whitaker slammed the phone down. Jada had won the fight, but the war for her life was entering the dangerous phase. The attack on Jada Mitchell's reputation did not begin with a scream. It began with a whisper, digital and insidious. Jada was awake in her home, a modest two-story colonial in the quiet part of the district. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the arrest and the viral explosion had faded, replaced by a cold, gnawing anxiety. Outside, an unmarked sedan sat 3 houses down. It was Jake Remington, the private investigator Ryan Callahan had hired. He was a former DEA agent with eyes that missed nothing, and he was the only reason Jada was sleeping, or trying to sleep at all. Inside the house, Jada's laptop pinged. Then again, then a cascade of notifications. She opened the screen, the blue light illuminating her tired face. Her email inbox was flooding. Bank alerts, social media login attempts, and then the news alerts. A tabloid blog funded by dark money connected to the police union had just dropped a bombshell. Exclusive. The secret life of Representative Jada Mitchell. Embezzlement. Drug money. The article was a masterpiece of fabrication. It claimed that Jada's tuition for law school had not come from scholarships, but from illicit earnings tied to a local gang leader. It posted doctored bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts. It was clumsy, but to the uneducated eye, it looked damning. Jada picked up the phone. Ryan answered on the first ring. "I see it," Ryan said, his voice gravelly with sleep. "Do not panic. It is Tyler Trent's work." "Trent?" Jada asked. "The fixer? He is Whitaker's cleanup guy. A slimeball who hacks for hire. This is the scandal they promised. They are trying to muddy the waters so the jury at your trial thinks you are a criminal. It is all fake, Ryan. My law school was paid for by the Pell Grant and 3 jobs," Jada said, anger rising in her throat. "Truth does not matter to them. Mud does. But they made a mistake." "What mistake?" "They forged a signature on one of those bank documents," Ryan said. "They used the signature of a bank manager named Robert Ellis. Robert Ellis died years ago. The document is dated later." Jada exhaled. "It is sloppy, and it is desperate." "But Jada, this is just the distraction. While we are fighting this, they are going to try to get to the real threat." "The clerk?" Jada realized. "The one with the ledger?" "Exactly. Her name is Mia Moreau. She has been hiding in a motel on the edge of town. She called me. She is scared. She says a patrol car has driven past her room multiple times tonight. They are hunting her, Jada." Jada stood up, her decision made instantly. "I am going to get her." "No," Ryan snapped. "You are under a microscope. If you are seen anywhere near a witness, they will revoke your release. You go back to jail. If they get to her, there is no case, and she dies. I know how these men work, Ryan. Lawson was the muscle, but Whitaker is the brain. He will not hesitate to silence her." Jada grabbed her keys. "Tell Jake to follow me. I'm not going alone." The Riverside Motel was a relic of the 70s, peeling paint and flickering neon. Rain had started again, washing the grime of the city into the gutters. Jada parked her Ford around the block. Jake Remington pulled up behind her in his sedan. He got out, a large man in a rain slicker. "This is a bad idea, Representative Mitchell." Jake grunted. "Politics is a bad idea, Jake. This is a rescue mission." They moved through the shadows toward room 114. The curtains were drawn tight. Jada knocked a specific rhythm Ryan had arranged. Knock, pause, knock, knock. The door cracked open. A chain rattled. A terrified eye peered out. "Mia," Jada whispered. The door flew open. Mia Moreau was a small woman in her late 30s, trembling, clutching a thick, leather-bound book to her chest. She looked like a rabbit caught in a trap. "They know I am here," Mia sobbed, pulling Jada inside. "I saw Lawson's partner, Officer Hayes. He was here." "We are getting you out," Jada said, her voice calm and commanding. "Jake, check the perimeter." "Wait," Mia said, her hands shaking as she held out the book. "You need to see this before we go. You need to know what you are up against." Jada opened the ledger. It was not just traffic tickets. It was a systematic accounting of corruption that spanned years. Judge Whitaker kickbacks, Officer Lawson collections, councilman names. It was a road map of the city's rot. Names of prominent businessmen, politicians, and police brass. Millions of dollars laundered through bail bonds and seized assets. "This brings down half the city," Jada whispered. "That is why they want me dead." Mia wept. Suddenly, glass shattered. The window of the motel room exploded inward. A canister hissed as it rolled across the carpet. Tear gas. "Get down!" Jake roared, bursting back into the room. Two men kicked the door in. They were not wearing uniforms. They wore ski masks and tactical gear. They held silencers. Jada did not think. She grabbed the heavy lamp from the bedside table and held it at the first intruder. It struck him in the shoulder, throwing off his aim. The bullet went wide, burying itself in the drywall. Jake was a blur of motion. He tackled the second gunman, slamming him against the dresser. "Run! Get her out!" Jake shouted to Jada, struggling with the man. Jada grabbed Mia's arm. "Move!" They scrambled out the back window into the alleyway. The gas was filling the room, choking them. They ran through the rain, slipping on the wet pavement. "My car!" Jada yelled, pointing to the end of the alley. They reached the ford. Jada shoved Mia into the passenger seat and vaulted behind the wheel. She cranked the engine just as the first gunman stumbled out of the alley, raising his weapon. Jada slammed the car into reverse. She did not aim for the man. She was not a killer. But she aimed close enough to make him dive. She spun the car around, tires screeching, and tore onto the main road. "Call Ryan!" Jada shouted to Mia, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Tell him we have the book. Tell him to get the feds now." Riverton woke up to a different kind of storm. Jada Mitchell had not gone home. She had driven straight to the federal building in the state capitol. She walked into the FBI field office covered in soot, clutching the ledger with Mia Moreau by her side, and Ryan Callahan meeting them at the door. The landscape of the city had changed. In the hospital room, Derek Lawson lay in his hospital bed, his jaw wired shut, sipping a protein shake through a straw. The pain was excruciating, but the silence from his friends was worse. Judge Whitaker had not visited. The union rep had stopped answering texts. The door opened. Lawson expected a nurse. Instead, two men in windbreakers walked in. The letters on their jackets were yellow and bold, FBI. Lawson's eyes widened. He tried to speak, but only a mumble came out. "Derek Lawson?" the lead agent, a man named Carter, asked. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, deprivation of rights under color of law, and attempted murder." Lawson shook his head frantically. "Attempted murder?" "The men at the motel gave you up, Derek," Carter said coldly. "They said you hired them from your hospital bed. We have the phone records." It was a lie. Whitaker had hired them, but the feds knew how to play the game. They needed Lawson to flip. "Judge Whitaker says you went rogue," Carter continued, leaning over the bed. "He is cutting a deal right now. He says you were the mastermind. He says he was scared of you." The betrayal hit Lawson harder than Jada's fist ever could. Whitaker was pinning it on him, after years of loyalty, after all the dirty work. Lawson's face turned purple with rage. He motioned for a pen and paper. The agent handed him a notepad. Lawson wrote furiously, the pen tearing through the paper. He did not write a confession. He wrote a list, dates, times, locations of buried cash, and one sentence at the bottom, "I will bury Clayton Whitaker." At the same time, Judge Whitaker was sitting in his chambers, rubbing up for the afternoon session. He felt invincible. He assumed the problem at the motel had been handled. He assumed Jada was dead or running. He heard a commotion in the outer office. "You cannot go in there," his secretary screamed. The heavy oak doors smashed open. It was not just the FBI. It was the state troopers. It was internal affairs. A sea of uniforms flooded the judge's sanctuary. "Clayton Whitaker," Agent Carter's partner announced. "Step away from the desk." Whitaker stood up, his face a mask of indignation. "Do you know who I am? I am the presiding judge of the 4th District. Get out of my chambers. You are a suspect in a RICO investigation," the agent said, walking around the desk. He grabbed the gavel, the same gavel Whitaker had used to silence so many victims, and tossed it into an evidence bag. "This is preposterous. I will have your badge." Whitaker sputtered. "You will have plenty of time to draft the paperwork in federal prison." The agent replied, "Cuff him." As they marched Whitaker out of the courthouse in handcuffs, the lobby was filled with people. But this time, it was not just press. It was the community. Hundreds of people. The shopkeeper Lawson had extorted. The families of kids Whitaker had sent away for maximum sentences on minor charges. Jada Mitchell stood at the front of the crowd, her arm in a sling from the rough night, looking tired but unbreakable. Whitaker saw her. He stopped. He looked at the woman he had tried to crush. Jada did not shout. She did not gloat. She simply held up her phone. On the screen was the live feed of the news. The headline read, "Operation Clean Sweep. Judge and officer indicted." Whitaker slumped. The arrogance evaporated. He looked old, frail, and pathetic. It was a blur of justice. With Lawson's testimony and the ledger, the dominoes fell fast. The police chief resigned in disgrace. The union president was indicted for misappropriation of funds. Other officers were suspended pending investigation. But the sweetest victory was not the arrests. It was the exoneration. The charges against Jada were dropped with prejudice. The district attorney, trying to save his own skin, held a press conference apologizing to her personally. "Miss Mitchell acted in self-defense against an unlawful assault," the DA stated. "She is a hero." Jada watched the press conference from her living room. Ryan sat beside her, pouring 2 glasses of sparkling cider. "You did it, kid," Ryan said. "You took on the machine and you won. We won," Jada corrected. But it is not over. Lawson and Whitaker still have to face a jury. "They will," Ryan said. "And you are going to be the star witness." The federal courthouse in the Capitol was a fortress of granite and glass, surrounded by a perimeter of news vans that stretched for blocks. This was not just a trial. It was a reckoning. Inside courtroom 4B, the air was thick, recycled, and heavy with anticipation. The gallery was packed shoulder to shoulder. There were activists in justice for Mitchell t-shirts, law students taking furious notes, and ordinary citizens who had driven miles just to see the end of the story. Jada Mitchell sat at the prosecution table, her posture as rigid as a steel beam. She wore white, a deliberate choice. It was not the color of surrender. It was the color of truth. Beside her, the lead federal prosecutor, Taylor Harlow, organized her files with the lethal calm of a predator who knows the trap has already snapped shut. On the other side of the aisle, the defense table looked like a funeral parlor. Derek Lawson was unrecognizable. The uniform that had once acted as his armor was gone, replaced by a generic, ill-fitting orange jumpsuit issued by the Federal Detention Center. The time in solitary confinement for his own protection had hollowed him out. He had lost weight. His skin was sallow. His eyes darted nervously around the room, unable to land on anything for more than a second. The bulldog was gone. Only a frightened animal remained. Judge Clayton Whitaker sat 2 chairs away, separated from his former enforcer by a high-priced defense attorney who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Whitaker was trying to maintain the facade of the distinguished jurist. He wore a sharp suit, but his hands trembled uncontrollably, a tremor he tried to hide by clasping them tightly on the table. "All rise!" the bailiff bellowed. Federal Judge Evelyn Hale entered. She was a woman known for zero tolerance of theatrics. She took her seat, her eyes sweeping over the courtroom before landing on the defendants. "Be seated," she commanded. "We are here for closing arguments and the verdict in United States versus Clayton Whitaker and Derek Lawson." The trial had been a marathon of damning evidence. The jury had seen everything. The ledger Mia Moreau had saved from the motel, the bank records, the testimony of the shopkeepers Lawson had extorted. But the centerpiece, the image burned into everyone's mind, was the video of the slap. It was time for Jada to take the stand one last time. Not as a defendant, but as the voice of the victim. Prosecutor Harlow stood up. "The government calls Jada Mitchell." Jada walked to the witness stand. The silence in the room was absolute. Every eye was fixed on her. She swore the oath, her voice clear and resonant, reaching the back of the gallery without a microphone. "Miss Mitchell," Harlow began gently, "the defense has argued that Officer Lawson was under extreme stress. They have argued that Judge Whitaker was unaware of his subordinate's actions. After everything you have seen, everything you have survived, what do you have to say to that?" Jada turned her head. She looked directly at the jury box. 12 strangers who held the fate of the city in their hands. Then she slowly turned her gaze to Derek Lawson. For the first time in the trial, he looked up and their eyes locked. He flinched. "I have spent my life believing in the law." Jada began, her voice low but carrying a quiet power. "I climbed from the bottom of Riverton to the halls of the state legislature, believing that the system works if you fight for it. But when Officer Lawson raised his hand to me in that courtroom, when he struck me across the face, he was not just hitting a woman. He was not just hitting a state representative." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "He was striking every person in this city who has ever been too afraid to speak. He was banking on my fear. He thought that because he wore a badge, he owned my dignity. He thought that because Judge Whitaker sat on the bench, the truth did not matter." Jada leaned forward slightly, her hands gripping the railing of the witness stand. "I did not hit him back out of anger. I did not knock him out because I wanted to hurt him. I did it because in that split second, I had to prove that we are not property. We are citizens. And when the law becomes a weapon used by criminals in uniform, it is the duty of the righteous to break that weapon." A juror in the front row wiped a tear from her cheek. Even Judge Hale seemed to hold her breath. "They are not victims of stress," Jada finished, her voice hardening into diamond. "They are the architects of their own destruction." The jury deliberated. When the buzzer sounded indicating they had reached a decision, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted from tension to electricity. The defendants were ordered to stand. Lawson needed help. His legs seemed to have turned to water. Whitaker stood stiffly. staring at a spot on the wall, refusing to accept reality. The foreman, a mechanic from a neighboring county, stood up with the verdict sheet in his hands. His hands were shaking. In the matter of the United States versus Derek Lawson, the foreman read, on count 1, conspiracy to violate civil rights, guilty. On count 2, wire fraud, guilty. On count 3, assault on a federal witness, guilty. Every guilty was a hammer blow. Lawson let out a low, keen sound like a wounded dog. He slumped forward, his forehead hitting the table. The tough guy, the man who had terrorized Riverton, dissolved into a sobbing mess. In the matter of Clayton Whitaker, the foreman continued. Whitaker stiffened. On count 1, racketeering, guilty. On count 2, money laundering, guilty. On count 3, solicitation of murder, guilty. Whitaker's face went gray. The facade crumbled. He looked suddenly ancient. A man watching his legacy turn to ash. He was looking at decades. He would die in a concrete box. Judge Hale banged her gavel, a sound of finality that echoed through the room. The defendants are remanded to custody immediately. Court is adjourned. The gallery erupted. It was not a cheer. It was a collective exhale of relief, a release of years of pent-up trauma. As the marshals moved in to shackle the men, a strange, quiet moment occurred in the chaos. As they dragged Lawson past the prosecution table, he stopped. He dug his heels in for a second. He looked at Jada. His eyes were red, wet, and filled with a terrifying clarity. "I am sorry," he whispered. It was raspy, broken. "I did not know." Jada stood up. She towered over him in that moment, not physically, but spiritually. She looked at the man who had tried to destroy her life. She did not offer forgiveness. Forgiveness was cheap, and this had cost too much. "You knew, Derek," she said, her voice cold as winter. "You just did not think it would cost you anything. Do your time and learn to be a man." The marshals yanked him away. The heavy doors slammed shut behind them. The exit from the courthouse was a scene from a movie, but the emotions were raw and real. When Jada pushed open the double doors and stepped out into the afternoon sun, the roar was deafening. Cameras flashed like lightning. Microphones were thrust into her face, but Jada did not look at the press. She looked at the people. There were hundreds of them. The shopkeeper, the teenager from the alley, Mia Moreau, now in witness protection, but watching from a secure location. Ryan Callahan stood beside Jada, looking like a proud father, lighting a victory cigar despite the no smoking signs. Jada raised a hand and the crowd quieted. "They want to quote," Jada said, her voice amplified by the array of microphones. "They want to know how it feels to win." She shook her head slowly. "This is not winning. Winning would be if this never happened. Winning would be if we did not need a ledger to prove that justice should be blind. This victory does not belong to me. It belongs to Mia Moreau, who risked her life for the truth. It belongs to every person who was told to sit down and shut up, but stood up anyway." She looked directly into the news cameras, her eyes blazing. "We have cleaned the house," she declared. "Now it is time to rebuild the foundation. The bully is down. Let us make sure he never gets back up." The scandal of the 4th District faded from the headlines, replaced by the steady, unglamorous work of reform. Jada Mitchell sat on the porch of her home. The Mitchell Act had passed. It was a landmark piece of legislation. Mandatory body cams with severe penalties for tampering, the end of qualified immunity for violent offenses, and independent oversight committees for every precinct in the state. A car pulled up. Ryan Callahan stepped out, looking slower than he used to, but with the same sharp glint in his eye. He walked up the porch steps and sat in the rocking chair beside her. "You saw the vote?" Ryan asked. "I saw it," Jada said, placing the tablet down. "They are calling you the Iron Rep in the papers." Ryan chuckled. "And the party leadership called me again. They do not just want you for Senate, Jada. They are talking governor." Jada looked out at the street. It was quiet. A patrol car drove by slowly. The officer inside saw Jada on the porch. He did not sneer. He did not intimidate. He slowed down, gave a respectful nod, and continued on his patrol. Jada smiled. It was not the smile of a politician. It was the smile of the soldier who had survived the war. "Governor." Jada laughed, the sound light and free. "One fight at a time, Ryan. One fight at a time." She looked down at her right hand. The knuckles were fully healed, the skin smooth, but beneath the skin the bone was denser, stronger than it had been before. The system had tried to break her. It had tried to slap her down into the gutter. Instead, it had forged her into something unbreakable. And there it is. The story of how Jada Mitchell took a slap to the face and turned it into a revolution. In the end, Jada Mitchell's story reminds us of one powerful truth that every single one of us needs to carry in our hearts. Never let anyone convince you that your dignity has a price tag or an expiration date. When a man with a badge thought he could slap her down and keep her silent, she didn't just defend herself. She stood up for every person who has ever been told to stay in their place, to shrink, to accept disrespect because the system said so. That single moment in the courtroom wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming power that no one has the right to take away. Life will test you. Bullies in uniforms, in suits, or behind keyboards will try to break your spirit, but the real victory comes when you refuse to become small. Jada showed us that courage isn't loud or flashy. It's quiet steel in your spine, muscle memory from every time you chose to rise instead of fold. True strength isn't about never falling. It's about what you build after someone tries to knock you flat. So the next time life tries to put you in your place, remember her eyes after that slap. Cold, clear, and completely unbroken. You are worth fighting for. Your voice matters. Your boundaries are sacred. Stand tall, even when your hands shake. The world needs more people who refuse to stay silent when injustice shows its face. If Jada's story moved you the way it moved me, drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done in her shoes? Would you have hit back or found another way? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire me to keep sharing tales like this. If you believe in standing up for what's right, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that reminds you how powerful you truly are. Let's keep building a community that refuses to be broken. Stay strong, stay brave, and never let them dim your light.